Welcome in everyone. This is an introduction to the awakening the sage within, how we can shift from merely aging with our body and instead restore these cultural traditions and practices that help us to really bloom into the sage or the elder, as was custom in many indigenous and intact societies. And this is really important now because today, especially in the second half of our life, we don't have the cultural traditions, the elders, the mentors, the stories that help alert us and give us a frame of reference for what we are experiencing as we transition through these very specific stages through our 40s, 50s, 60s, all the ways up to 100. These stages of life were very known, and what we would experience and how we would make these transitions were also known. And so they had the culture and the processes and the stories to help us really bloom into each of these stages and grow into a greater sense of value that we can contribute back to the world. Whereas today you can see how, because we don't have these traditions anymore, we have people growing in the second half of their life becoming more marginalized. Those who don't know how to really grief tend and harvest their life tend to carry all the stories that weigh them down and prevent them from really blooming into what's now available to them. Right? And so this is a very crucial moment, and this is what's part of the Awaken the Sage project. If you're new to me, my name is Chi, short for Chi Vito, and I help facilitate the Awaken the Sage project, which is part of Tree of Totems, which is a cultural community of people from many different lands, many different traditions, both indigenous and non-indigenous, who are coming together to piece back a culture that is relevant for us today, especially as we make these transitions into the second half of our life. And in this, we are remembering how we are an extension of nature. And the laws that govern nature are a part of our own movement in life and our own development. And in this, we are also restoring a more mythic experience of life. And why this is important is because when we look at our life from a literal cause and effect kind of lens, we lose something. We lose the deeper meanings, and we lose the beauty of the life that we have lived. And we get trapped in what was good and what was bad, what was right, what was wrong. When underneath it all, there's this greater movement, what we call the river beneath the river. And we each have that in our own life. We each can call it our own song line. We call it our one true vow that is stewarding us through our life. And so through these traditions, we help come back into close contact with what that is. So it informs us with how to move and be dreamt into life today. As my mentor, Ben, who is a Hopi elder, he shared, we are all indigenous of earth. The waters of my body are the waters of this earth, right? And he said that it's time we help each other remember. It's time we help each other remember how we are a part of the cyclic web of life as we transition through these very specific life stage transitions, again, that are known. Right. So in tonight's virtual fire gathering, right, we're gathering around this virtual fireside here, and this is a recording of our live council fires. And we're making this available for those who can't show up. And so in this recording, you can say, we are going to review why this is happening. Like, what are these stages of life? And if you're experiencing the sense of shedding life, and life is dissolving around you, and something's calling you now to step into a new paradigm of self and what you want to experience in life, we're going to share why is this really happening and what specifically is occurring, so you know what to lean into with greater clarity. Right. And we'll also share these indigenous and ancestral perspectives, the traditions, these practices that, make these significant life stage transitions become a source of growing into ourselves instead of becoming more depleted by life. And we'll also share, what are the dangerous traps, right? What are the blocks and pitfalls that most people trip over today, right? Because we lack these traditions. These are times offered for profound growth and beauty, but because we lack these traditions, and many people won't have a frame of reference, they don't have a sense of support, so they collapse into their shadows, into their grief, into their unhealed wounds. And instead of being a time of blooming, it becomes a time of a lot of anxieties, a lot of fears, right? And when we have those fears and we don't have these traditions, they block us from actually stepping into this new stage of life. So instead of carrying, our power, we end up just, again, collapsing into those wounds, right? And then we start this weary cycle all over again until we become ripe enough again for life to present these opportunities to grow into these greater levels of self, because life is cyclic and you will come back to it again and again. And each time it's asking you, are you now ripe enough? Are you now ready to heal your past and grow into your true gifts, right? And so in this, we'll explore how to make this transition and what is available for you today. Okay. Now, before I go any further, I want to share how to listen into this recording, because this is really important, right? This isn't your typical like Zoom or video recording. We're practicing what's called the oral tradition. So don't listen. So don't listen for the bullet points. Instead, ask yourself, where do you find yourself in the sharing? What feelings or imagery are conjured within you through the telling? Right? What questions come to greet you? Pay attention to these, and you will get a lot from this, so that what is shared can alert that which is inside of you trying to find a voice, so it can begin to speak with you. And therefore, whatever you receive from this sharing will be uniquely yours, because we're not here to just pass on information. We're crafting these traditional cultural experiences that you can't come close in with what's wanting to take form within you, find a voice, all right, be dreamt through you. That's going to be unique to you. So before we go any further, we're going to lean into a poem. And this poem is really significant in this type of work and what we're going to be sharing into. So listen into these words. And again, where do you find yourself at them? What questions may come and greet you during the sharing? So listening to these words, it's a poem by David White called Sweet Darkness. The dark will be your home tonight. The dark will be your home tonight. The dark will give you a horizon further than you can see. Dark will give you a horizon further than you can see. You must learn one thing. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds except to the one which you belong. Give up all the other worlds except to the one which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. David White. Sweet darkness. Just take a moment, feel into those words and where you found yourself within them. When we are going through these very specific life stage transitions, it could feel like we're suddenly going into the darkness. The path ahead becomes obscure. We can't truly see. And as we suddenly seem to dissolve, we tend to come within ourselves at, and no matter how many people are surrounding us that love us and that we love, we may feel this kind of aloneness, this own sense of confinement within ourselves with what we are going through. And so the dark will be your home tonight. The night will give you a horizon further than you can see. In other words, if we are willing to come into that darkness of our griefs and our stories of what is right here, inviting us in, we'll be able to heal and grow. And then we will now be able to see into the horizon further than what we can see now. See, there comes a time in our life when we step through this invisible doorway and we stand looking out at a very different kind of horizon than the one we saw in our youthful decades. You find yourself in a landscape that's familiar, yet now feels foreign, right? In your youth, you had different ideas and visions of what that horizon of your life held. But now that you have climbed up the mountain far enough, you have acquired experience, right? You've worn the tread off your boots enough now, right? You now have a new vantage point. And that sense of needing to will life to happen gives way to a deeper desire for authenticity, for connection, right? For relationship. Right? So we come to a moment when you feel in your bones, you must give up all the other worlds except to the one you belong. You feel in your bones, you must let go of all the other worlds except to the one which you belong, which is alive and strong and not wanting to be called, right? In other words, you arrive into a new moment where you are no longer interested in having these trivial conversations and interactions that don't directly feed you. And because you have loved, you've experienced loss. And that accompanied grief, if you are willing, now offers you deeper layers of feeling and being in the world. And anything else just feels superficial. So we say we're being invited in. And in this, there's this moment you can no longer deny, right? This greater calling and expression that is trembling just beneath the surface of your being, right? A movement really towards a greater authenticity with who and what you want to bring into your life. And you feel you must answer and make the shift away from anything that does not make you come alive or feel authentic, because if you do not, you can feel this slow, silent death creep in. You feel that. So here's the indigenous and ancestral perspective of what's happening and why it's happening, right? And in this, you want to lean in with a mythic kind of ear. Listen to the symbology and the meaning within how they connect with life, the movement of life, because it's so beautiful. Because here's what's missing, right? Cross-culturally, it's shared that we each come into this world with a song. We are each born into this world with a song, and that you are that song. And it was up to the village members to help us see what your unique songline is and grow into it. In other words, they looked for your gifts, right? They looked for the beauty. They looked for your aptitudes. They looked for what was the unique beauty that was being made through your life. Can you imagine being a part of that kind of community today? Being a part of a group that's looking for your gifts, can receive your stories, that is supporting versus looking for, your flaws. Think of that impact that would have on today's society. A beautiful man named Martin Prechtel, he shares, he's an Apache elder trained in the Mayan ways down in Guatemala. And he shares how the indigenous mind knows that we owe it to the earth to become that part of the song that is missing. He says, the earth wants to put the song back together again. And if we become the lost parts of the song, we help put the earth back together. We put the health and the wholeness of the people back together. Love that. Love that imagery. But today, instead of helping us find our unique songline, we were told to conform to the image that's expected of us and to even sacrifice our songline to fit that image and role. But here's the thing. And this is what the indigenous elders share. Because we are part of nature, they share, we each experience that song wanting to retake form within us. So periodically throughout our life, you experience these kinds of descents, right? As you shift into a new stage of life. At various points, in our life, right? You feel something deeper and original, right? Inside your being, right? Wanting to take form and be lived through you. And we're being asked, are you now ripe enough to say yes? Are you now ripe enough to heal? And so we would begin this process of shedding the skins, the layers of ourself, the stories that do not directly feed us. Take off the mask we have been conditioned to wear. And so today we see many people in the second half of their life experience an involuntary kind of descent into soul, right? Through these ravaged layers that we have used to cover ourselves up with. But without the traditions and these ancestral knowledge, we find many merely collapse into their shadows. Because here's the thing, here's the primary block that is hurting us today. It's like we've been taught to not look at our past. We've been taught to only look forward, to push through. We've been taught to ignore our inner territory of soul and the unexpressed grief, to ignore the dreamings, to ignore our felt expectations, to ignore the unspoken voices within you that's ever inviting you in. We're taught to deny these richly textual layers of our own personal depths that if you were to listen to these depths and the voice deeper inside you, it would inform you of what you truly value and find beautiful and holy in your world. You would come close in with your songline. Indigenous elders share, we have fallen out of our story. We have become a people without memory. We have become a people without memory. We become a people who don't know the storied life of where we come from. And like where we come from, I don't mean like where you grew up, what state or what have you, but what were you born into? How did you grow and move through life? That's the story of where you come from. And it said, if you don't know where you come from, then you don't have a ground to stand on. And so as we stand here looking out at a new horizon, beckon us into, we find many approach it with uncertainty and anxiety and fear versus saying, I know what I have came from. I know what I have grew from. And these are the strength and the medicine and powers I have to step into what's now being offered me. We see the future of uncertainty as gifts that are ready to be offered us instead of fears of what may happen. Feel the difference in that? Now, in the Norse tradition, they have what is called the well of memory. It's very beautiful. The well of memory, and it burbles up at the roots of the tree of life. Burbles up at the roots of the tree of life, the well of memory. And there's the ancient woman who tends to the well, and she tends to it by going out each morning and collecting the dewdrops on the plants and the tears that have been offered into the night. And it is said that these are the memories of yesterday. The dewdrops and the tears are the memories of yesterday, and it is memory that feeds the tree of life. And so it's said that when we don't honor our memories, then our own tree of life, our songline, dies within us, and we begin to wither. We become diminished in spirit and heart and mind alongside our body as it ages. And so here we recognize that our true vitality of spirit, right, the key, right, is dependent on your personal relationship with your songline, right? The storied life, the life story being lived through you, right? Not the stories that you tell yourself, but your personal myth, your one true vow. So your vitality is dependent on that relationship with your songline, and your songline is only as strong and powerful as you know the stories of the path that has brought you here, your memories. So we see when we deny these parts of ourselves, deny our memories, many become broken by life instead of broken open to life. And so we see many fail to find their unique songline that is living through them. Now, we've been conditioned not to know it, to even ignore it. We see many fail to really find that which is really wanting to be dreamt through them, right? So it's said that, those who grow old without finding a genuine sense of meaning in their lives, right? That one true vow, they tend to become repositories of fear and anxiety, while those who find that inner sense of meaning know their songline and their purpose. They tend to become keepers of medicine, keepers of healing and wisdom. Where do you feel you are right now? Are you leaning into more of the repositories of fear and anxiety? Or are you really feeling the gifts of your wisdom and strengths? It's a bit of both, I imagine, right? So we're asking here, how do we become that part of the song that's missing? How do we come close in and know what is our songline? The Aborigine and other intact societies from traditions around the world, they have a tradition where in the wintertime, they join nature in withdrawing within itself, and they trail their song lines through their life, and they harvest their stories. They harvest the stories of their life. They gather together around the fire, and they listen into the stories that alert them of the deeper meanings and reasons within their experiences. They partake in rituals and reflective conversations that also alert them to the hidden layers and the deeper meanings of their past experiences. They have a way of seeking the teachings within their life experiences and collecting the unique knowledge that they have grown into because of it. They come into new relationship with their own life. So their stories of their life are used to reinforce the powers and gifts that their life has afforded them. Can you feel how powerful this is? Imagine the impact and beauty of coming together as a people in such a way. What impact would that have? Right? Incredible. If you've ever sat with a traditional elder, it becomes very clear that they not only know their stories and can tell them from a place of power, right? Meaning, this is what I healed from. This is what I grew out of and bloomed into. But there's also this felt sense that every time they tell their story, every time they tell their story, they are learning something new. Each time they receive a new power, a new healing, a new teaching that they've now become ripe enough to receive. In other words, their own stories become a life-giving well of teaching and healing that keeps on giving every time they drink from it and every time they share from it. Can you feel how important it is to bring these practices back? Because here's the danger and why many fail to make this transition, right? Today, instead of our stories being a source of power, we see how we have been conditioned to view and tell our life stories in a way to reinforce our inadequacies, our lack of worth, our shame, reinforce our limited power, our limited ability to step into the changes and the dreamings that are being called to be lived through us. And we've been conditioned to hide away and do this inner work alone in secret. And so we're robbed. We're robbed of the community and the stories and the rituals that can hold us in a safe and inspired space as we navigate our own inner territories. How many times have you felt that call to change and grow, but something has pulled you back, or you felt blocked, or fear, right? And uncertainty has prevented you from making the changes you wanted to make or grow into. What impact has that had on your life? I know for me, it's had huge impacts. What is it costing you right now as you dare to reimagine the remaining time you have left of this short, precious life? What could that cost you? Angeles Arian, a Basque elder anthropologist, she shares, Indigenous knew about the four chambers in our heart, and they use it as a way of measuring, we're measuring if we are aligned and alive in our unique song line. They use these four chambers as a way to gauge if we were in alignment with our true story or the false stories that have been given to us that limit us. This is Martin Shaw, fellow mythologist and storyteller. He shares bad storytelling casts spells. Good storytelling breaks them. And so you can see there's been a lot of really bad storytelling, a lot of spell casting that has locked us in these limited stories. And so they would use these four chambers of the heart to gauge if they've been spell cast or if they're truly aligned. And these four chambers of the heart, they says, well, you have a full heart. Wasp right here. Do you have a full heart? Or are you half-hearted? Right? Do you have an open heart or a closed heart? Do you have a clear heart or a confused and doubting heart? Do you have a strong heart or a weak heart? And so they would ask, where in your life right now are you half-hearted? Wherever you are half-hearted means you have either outgrown or you are in the wrong place. Where have you become closed-hearted instead of open-hearted? Where do you have a confused and doubting heart instead of a clear heart? And where have you grown weak-hearted instead of strong-hearted? They define strong-hearted as, knowing who you are, what power and gifts you have to hold this space in life. And there's an example of Rosa Parks, who was this small, petite woman who one day sat on the bus and she said, "No, I will not move. I have every right to be here." And she changed the South and the US forever. That's strong-heartedness. So where have we become weak-hearted instead of strong-hearted? And the health of our four hearts is dependent on how we know our true stories. Can you feel how important it is that we learn our stories? Our true origin stories of where we came from, what you grew from, what you healed from, bloomed into despite all. Now, through our social condition, you can see how much spell casting has occurred, how our own stories have become prisons and used against us to reinforce and diminish, to really just diminish our own personal power. And so here we are being invited into a more original way of knowing our stories, coming into new relationship with the life we've lived so that you may now bloom into this new horizon that is extending out in front of you. So what we're leaning into here is this time-honored tradition that's found around the world, that when we come into the second half of our life, it is time we do what we call the harvest. We heal our past, we harvest our stories, we integrate them, and we bloom into these gifts. When we take the moment to pause and reflect on the journey we have traveled thus far, we tap into these rich layers of feeling, and you avail yourself to the deeper meanings of your life. When you pause and let the voices of your past be heard from a new narrative, right? Not the inner critic or social conditioning, right? When you see these experiences from this new vantage point of where you are now, because you are now an elder to your younger self, you've acquired experience and knowledge that your younger self didn't have. And when you do these things, you find you're able to step into your medicine, right? That is your gifts, your strengths, the unique wisdom your life has uniquely afforded you. And therefore, you restore the four chambers of your heart and become full-hearted, clear-hearted, strong-hearted, right? Full-hearted. If we don't pause and reflect, however, you can see how we find our past becomes a weight, like a bag of talking heads slung over our shoulder, weighing us down, narrating from the voice of the inner critic, from shame, regret, guilt that we've accumulated, who use these stories to bind you and reinforce your sense of unworthiness and inadequacy, so that instead of growing into the sage and the elder, we grow older, we grow elderly. Instead of becoming keepers of medicine and wisdom, we become repositories of fears and anxieties. And again, it was once the responsibility of the village members to see the gifts in others, to help them mature into them. So each person's unique journey of trials and experiences was honored. Imagine being part of that community. And this kind of deep dive into our inner territory was traditionally done as a community, coming together in ritual and listening into the stories and the myths that awaken us to the hidden layers of our own life, that reveals the deeper meanings and reasons for the experiences we had. So during the darker months of the year, we came together, gathered around the fire, took in ritual and ceremony, listened to the stories, we harvested our life. healed our past, felt in that togetherness, even while we navigated our own inner territory of soul. If this really resonates with you, if you're feeling this call, this is what Awaken the Sage project is about, is restoring these traditions, bringing us back together in these kind of ways to help move us through the second half of our life as we go through these stages of life. This September, we join the fall equinox. We join nature withdrawing within itself, and a small group of us are coming together to go through a 6-month rites of passage from fall equinox to spring equinox, where we're coming back into ceremony, coming back into the storytelling, learning how to harvest our life stories, how to look from an indigenous and ancestral lens that weaves us into the deeper meanings versus reinforces our guilt or our wounds or what have you. We take back our life, we reclaim our stories, and we bloom together. If that calls to you, please go to our website, awakenthesage.com, and schedule a free conversation. We always begin with introductions. Introduce yourself, I introduce myself. And we do a small group of like maybe 10 people. So we keep it nice and intimate. And we gather here at the Tortoise Temple on the eastern edge of Portland. And we also have a virtual fireside. So if you're not close by, you can still participate in the journey and experience this. So go to our website, awakenthesage.com. Yeah. All right, everyone. My name is Chivito. Thanks for listening. Be a part of helping restore this culture with us. And I look forward to sharing.